And what shouldn't people do?
So a common thing for people to do is to say, well, I've had a bad night. I'm not going to do very well today. I'm not going to function very well, so I'll take it easy. And so instead of going to that crucial meeting, or instead of tackling that really tough piece of work, we do the filing, or something very routine and something mundane. And those sorts of things can actually increase sleepiness. So if I make the comparison with the idea that sometimes people will fall asleep at the wheel of a car, well, they do, of course they do, and that happens. But where does it happen? Well, it actually tends to happen on long, straight motorways, long, boring motorways. It doesn't happen driving around the busy city streets here in King's Cross. So the same will apply in terms of your normal daytime routines. If you turn them into something that's very mundane and safe, you may end up feeling more sleepy. So being careful not to protect yourself against what you think might happen as a consequence of a bad night's sleep, but actually to test that out a little bit more carefully. There's also a lot of stuff said about, I was going to say stuff and nonsense, but there's a lot said about not eating cheese and chocolate and things like this before bed. I'm not sure that there's all that much in that. I think caffeine perhaps makes it more difficult for people to sleep if they are not used to it, or if they take quite a high dose of it. But if you take it reasonably early in the evening, then that should be okay. And as far as I'm aware, cheese doesn't cause people to have nightmares. I think it's just a nice story, but I don't know that there's any reality in that. What else do people do? People will, of course, drink. They'll take some booze, which indeed does help to people to get to sleep, but then it interferes with them staying asleep, and not simply because they need to get up and go to the loo because they've drunk too much, but alcohol actually seems to tamper with the normal sleep pattern. And of course, if you're drinking too much, then it might actually make you depressed. This is one of the tricks that alcohol plays on people. It can make you feel a bit more relaxed, and so let's take another one. But actually, in the end, it's like taking an antidepressant, and we know that depression interferes with people's sleep too. So we have to moderate the alcohol intake. Exercise and going to bed when you're very, very tired. Well, I think it's the right thing to do to go to bed when you're tired, rather than simply because the clock tells you that it's bedtime. If you're not going to sleep, then there may not be a lot of point being in bed. But so go to bed when tired. Making yourself very, very tired by exercise is a tricky one. Exercise helps in as much as fit people sleep better than people who are not fit. But if you go to the gym late in the evening in the hope of exhausting yourself and then try and sleep directly afterwards, you're very likely to still have high levels of adrenaline flowing through your system, and that's very likely to keep you awake. So exercise earlier in the evening rather than late. So you need a curfew for that. And I said, if you're not going to sleep, is there any point in being in bed? Well, a thing that people do when they don't sleep very well is spend quite long periods of time in bed. And they do it in order to make up for the fact that they haven't slept very well, and I suppose in the hope that they will get some sleep. But it rarely works. So, if you want to sleep well, stay out of bed for a lot of the time. A little paradoxical there, I know, but it is worth working out how much time you actually sleep, and then going to bed for roughly that amount of time If you're sleeping for a very short period of time, then that might be something that's very difficult to do. But because you might end up being absolutely exhausted, or even get less sleep. But it is worth looking at how much sleep you get, and if you get 5-6 hours a night, then perhaps spending roughly that amount of time in bed, and you may find that consolidates your sleep, and when it has done, and you're spending most of the time that you're in bed asleep, then you can go to bed a little bit earlier, and when that's consolidated, a little bit earlier again and again, and you can work backwards in that way. Within all of that is the idea that you set the clock in order to get up at the same time every day. That's a really important thing to do. And actually, if you can't do anything else, that's perhaps the most important thing to do. That helps to set your daily biorhythm, because without it, you may find that your sleep drifts, and you end up eventually being asleep during the day for long periods of time, and not during the night. So setting a getting up time and sticking to it, even at weekends, that's an important thing to do while your sleep is fragile. Once it's strong and robust, then you can move around and play with it a lot more, but in the beginning, that's a very important thing to do. So should you sleep during the day? Should you take a nap? The usual advice is that you shouldn't. You should, you will get only so much sleep in only 24 hours, and if you take some of it during the day, then it's likely to take away from what happens at night. But some people do seem to benefit from a brief nap, and they feel much better for it, and it doesn't interfere with their sleep at night. So people vary a little bit. You may be one of the few people who does profit from a short nap, but that should be no more than 15 or 20 minutes. In terms of being in bed and being awake, if you're awake if you haven't gone to sleep or you haven't gone back to sleep for maybe 25 minutes or a half an hour, then it may be worth getting out of bed and going into another room, if that's possible, and sitting quietly and doing something soothing, like reading a book. I'm hesitant to tell people that that TV or computer work is a good idea during the middle of the night. I don't think it is. Very few TV producers make programs that they hope will send people back to sleep, and fewer people make adverts with that intention. So it's there, and it's going to lift you, and it's going to waken you up. So it is better I think the best idea is actually to read, if you can. Something gentle and soothing, not something invigorating, not something demanding, not a work thing, but something that will give you a little pleasure. And when you then feel sleepy again, then go back to bed and have another go. The thing that really seems to keep people awake in the night isn't so much tinnitus, but it's a busy mind. And of course that may be thinking about tinnitus, or it may be thinking about other problems, or it may be thinking about not sleeping and the consequences of that. And of course bedtime is the one time when our mind can really get busy, because up until then it's occupied with the cares of the day and our work and our cooking and our tidying up and perhaps watching some TV programs or being with the family or doing whatever else, or the extra work that we have to do in the evening. And then we get into bed and the mind is free. And there's a very strong risk that it's going to go on a journey. And it is that mental activity, it is the busy mind rather than a busy body that seems to keep most people awake. That's been identified as the thing in over 90% of people who sleep badly, the busy mind. So that needs to be tackled, if possible.